The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. Justice Secretary Menardo Guevarra admits before the United Nations that some law enforcement agents failed to follow standard protocols in operations under the country's war on drugs. In an online session of the UN Human Rights Council, Guevarra noted lapses by authorities in handling of drug operations in the country. These include mistakes in processing of crime scenes and failure to coordinate with other agencies, among others. Despite this, Guevarra emphasized that the country's legal and judicial system, as well as its domestic accountability mechanisms, are functioning as they should. Guevarra said the Philippines is rejecting any attempt by an external entity to assume jurisdiction over internal matters such as the drug war. The Justice Secretary added that the government is now working to pass a law establishing a national preventive mechanism in line with the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture.
Our initial and preliminary findings confirm that in many of these cases, law enforcement agents asserted that the subject of the anti-drugs operations resisted arrest or attempted to draw a weapon and fight back. Yet, no full examination of the weapon recovered was conducted, that in more than half of the records reviewed, the law enforcement agents involved failed to follow standard protocols pertaining to coordination with other agencies and the processing of the crime scene.
The Philippine Red Cross and Angkas have inked a partnership for faster delivery of so-called humanitarian interventions, like blood requirements, first aid, and even saliva samples for COVID testing.
Formal program for the signing of the MOA.
And I want you to all to know that we now have about
He said quick access and delivery of aid through the use of motorcycles will make a difference because every minute counts in life and death situations. Gordon added that Angkas riders will undergo proper training for the collection of saliva samples for COVID-19 testing. This means senior citizens, PWDs, and pregnant women can easily get tested for COVID-19 without leaving their homes. PRC Molecular Laboratory Head Pauline Ubial said there's no need to worry about the transport of samples from one place to the lab because they will assure that there will be no leakages or contamination of the specimen.
Number one sa saliva collection, it's very convenient at hindi kailangan ng protective equipment, yung PPE, yung nagko-collect. So, it can be done by anyone trained on saliva collection. And once na ma-seal yung bottle, kasi screw cap yan, the possibility of contamination and leakage is very, very small. And then we also will develop a container that can hold the saliva vials.
The global health crisis is taking a toll on working mothers. One study shows that 1 in 4 women in corporate America are considering leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers due to COVID-19. Power Moms author Joanne Lublin joined Bloomberg's Scarlet Fu to talk about the crisis being faced by working moms. Let's listen in.
Now that we're a year into the pandemic, what surprises you the most about the nature of this crisis?
I guess what surprises me the most about the nature of this crisis is that working moms are actually having a harder time than I expected. I kind of thought that maybe in a crisis like this, that the working dads would pick up the slack. A lot of them have, but not enough. And what that's done is caused a huge exodus of working mothers from the workforce. In fact, there was one study that suggested that women with children under 12 lost nearly 2.2 million jobs since the pandemic struck. And that was 3 times the rate of fathers. And that's happening because they've got too many balls to juggle in the air, and the dads are not picking up enough of their share of the burden, both in terms of educating those kids from home and domestic work.
Yeah, some sobering numbers there. Originally, people were saying that the remote work environment could be a boon or could be helpful for working moms. What are the specific challenges that we've seen working moms face over the past year? And is there a way for women to use remote work to their advantage going forward?
Well, I think this huge national experiment that we've seen in working remotely has actually proven to be advantageous for working parents, because we've now demonstrated that you can indeed be productive if you've got the support structure. And that's not just those in the home, but you've got the support structure from the employer. And so the longer implication here is that companies of many sizes, big and small, are committed to allowing employees to work from home post-COVID, either a couple days a week or full-time. And that has profound implications, it seems to me, for working parents.
Do you see the private sector leading the way in reevaluating the need for affordable childcare? Are they leading or are they following?
I think at this point, they are definitely following. As you know, America is one of the few industrialized countries that lacks national mandated paid maternity and paternity leave, known as family medical leave. We're also one of the few industrialized countries that does not subsidize childcare. But the good news is we've got a president and an administration committed to making some changes.
Well, let's see if he can do it within the first 2 years, given how things can change very rapidly. In your book, Joanne, you compare and contrast two generations of working moms, boomers and Gen Xers. What's the single biggest difference between how boomers and Gen Xers navigate work-life balance?
Well, I think the biggest difference is that the boomers sort of had to make an excuse for what they were doing. They weren't easily accepted in their dual roles. They would often not display photos of their children anywhere near their workspace. They would make excuses if they had to leave work early for a childcare related issue. And the Gen Xers and the millennials are not only proud, but they feel like they earned their place. And because of that, and they have earned their place because of these boomer moms who blazed the trail before them. And as a result, it's easier.
So in the final minute that we have left, Joanne, what does that mean for the millennial moms, the millennial working moms? How do they fit into the paradigm?
Well, about a third of those younger executive moms I interviewed were millennial moms. And what I think it means for them is that they have to choose their life partner carefully. They have to choose their workplace carefully. And equally important, they have to choose mentors and sponsors at key points in their careers so that they can get ahead when they want to.
Yeah, it all comes down to working carefully. So what does this mean for Gen Z, for the next generation working moms, very quickly?
I think what it means is that you should look for support and guidance from women who have gone before you, and especially ones who are in high-ranking positions in your company. But at the end of the day, you're going to need male sponsors and mentors much more than you're going to need female ones, because they still rule the roost.
The Supreme Court has ruled that legitimate Filipino children can now use the surname of their mother as their own. In a 15-page decision written by Justice Marvic Leonen, the High Court said this is in keeping with the Constitution, which requires the state to ensure the fundamental equality of men and women before the law. Because of this, the Supreme Court reversed trial and appellate court rulings that rejected the plea of Anacleto Alanis III to change his surname to match his mother's, who single-handedly raised him and his siblings. We'll be back with more stories after a quick break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. Additional hog supply from the Agriculture Department has reached the metro, but pork retailers are lamenting what they're receiving daily is not enough to sustain their businesses. Shaila Francisco with the details.
Hog deliveries facilitated by the Agriculture Department have arrived in some wet markets in Quezon City. With one hog selling at 230 pesos a kilo, vendors at Mega Q-Mart managed to comply with the price ceiling. At Commonwealth Market, 30 heads of hogs were sold to 4 stalls. But this is not enough. Some stalls are still unable to sell pork.
Dapat mga 2-3 baboy namin para makabayad kami ng pwesto, may kaunting kita. Ngayon ilan ang baboy namin, isa lang. Uwit pa ng liit.
Dapat lahat sana lahat mabigyan din para pare-pareho, masunod ng price list.
Apart from shipments being diverted to nearby provinces, the DA says volume was also affected by weather disturbances and LGU restrictions. It also depends on the day supplier.
Yung nanggagaling ng Mindanao, yun yung murang baboy. Yung nanggagaling ng Calabarzon, medyo talagang yun yung mahirap yung presyo.
Pork producers say this is not a temporary problem. Speaking to One News' The Chiefs, the Pork Producers Federation says Metro Manila requires a daily supply of 10,000 hogs, way above the 4,000 estimated by the DA.
Kung totoo yung sinasabi nila, dapat marami tayong baboy dito sa Metro Manila.
The DA proposes to import 400,000 metric tons of pork under the Minimum Access Volume Plus. Stakeholders warn against the move. They say this is twice the country's expected shortage supply.
Hindi na makapag-compete talaga yung ating mga producer. In the long term, mawawala itong industry.
Hog raisers plan to seek help from Malacanang. The DA says it will study if the price cap should be lifted a month after implementation. For now, they deem the move successful.
Successful ang price ceiling in effect na ngayon ay, kasi dati 400, 450 ang baboy. Ngayon wala na tayong nakikita 400 to 450. Ang monitoring namin, meron pa nagbebenta 350, 360, pero wala na yung 400 to 450. In effect, the price ceiling is successful.
Meanwhile, no threat still on chicken supply. The DA says the country remains bird flu free. Ongoing surveillance is being conducted to prevent the disease from entering the Philippines. Shaila Francisco, We Are One News.
President Duterte renews his call for Filipinos to set aside differences as the country commemorates the 35th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution. In a statement, Duterte wants EDSA 1 to serve as a constant reminder for us to remain vigilant in protecting our democratic institutions, preserve our values, and uphold our rights. In the spirit of EDSA 1, the Chief Executive is encouraging us to work together in building a legacy that we can all be proud of. Meanwhile, Vice President Leni Robredo insists that we are still in the process of forging the nation that we dreamt and fought for in EDSA. This as Robredo claims that our democracy remains under constant threat of revisionism and personal agendas. Robredo is now challenging us all to continue to fight together to achieve a free, just, and humane society. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join Riza Diaz later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lehano. We are One News.